Hello, and welcome back to Let's Play Alundra. Guess where we are? Still in the ancient temple. I know previously we were at the, the Desert of Despair and the Cliffs of Madness, but really this place is the worst, despite having the most sort of harmless name. I mean, this is going to be our first multi-video dungeon, which tells you something already. Anyway, notice there's a switch, sort of fence in the corner over there, but no particular way to get to it. We can't jump there from a little bit of cobblestones here in the center of the room, so what we have to do is first kill all these sandworms. It does take a little while, because as it turns out, they're invulnerable when burrowing back into the ground, which is kind of a pain. But once you get them all, we get this barrel. And we take our trusty old mining bomb, and now we can use the barrel, after some effort, to get up on the fence here. And then use it again to get to the platform containing the exit. This is actually timed. The fence that covers the exit will reset if you don't move there quickly enough. Those barrels contain bees for some reason. Not the bees! Yeah. Anyway, for all this dungeon's difficulties, thankfully the Gilded Falcon is pretty easy to find. It's right here next to the third of those 4 statues we were supposed to locate. And of course, we saw this on the way up through these ramparts the first time around, so we knew we were going to make our way over there eventually. This part's pretty familiar. As it turns out, Grogs can actually block your attacks with their hook, including thrown items, which is kind of a pain. So, by about this point, if you don't know how to use the bomb as a combat item, now is definitely a good time to learn, because it is definitely the easiest way to take care of them. They're very easy to control because they don't really run at you, and they don't really move at all once they get within attacking range. They just sit there and throw their hook at you. So it's pretty easy to do some crowd control and knock them back into a bomb after it lands. It's kind of weird in the sense that every enemy reacts differently when hit with a bomb. I mean, the turtles, the bomb explodes right away, if you recall from the coal mine. But for the Grogs, the bomb just goes into prime state close to exploding when you hit them, which is a little weird. It's inconsistent, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference because it still remains the best way to take care of them, assuming you get the hang of it, which, thankfully, I did while filming this episode. We don't need to kill these sandworms, but it does help a lot for what we're trying to do here. That different sand close to the door out of the room on the south will actually drop you back down to the room we were in before. So what you want to do is pick up this barrel again. I don't believe you can leave the barrel on the quicksand either, so you want to put it right there at the corner, then jump to it from the cobblestones on the right, and out the door. We're now at the top of the ancient temple, but there's not much to do here. The first thing we need to do is drop down a level. You'll notice there's also a shortcut down to the start of the entire area from here. We'll be using that later. And this brings us to the other side of the staircase that we saw while coming from the other direction, looking for the third statue. Basically what we need to do here is, well, I mean, we don't need to do this, but we can remove these 2 pots to open up to get the boulder out of the way and give us a shortcut, or at least full access to the entire upper portion of the temple. And now we're on the right side of the ramparts. In case the general sense of symmetry isn't obvious, we'll be looking for one of the other 4 statues, or the 4th of the 4 statues, somewhere around here. It's basically why they gave us 2 entrances when we reached the top of the temple previously. We took the left one to find the 3rd statue, now we're taking the right one to make our way to the 4th statue. Take care of that guy, and yeah, up there we can pick up another pot, usually containing some health, and we can actually see the 4th statue for ourselves, just to ensure that we're still on the right track. We'll carry this down with us, try to take care of this Grog over here, but remember, like I said, they can block it with their hook, which is not really something you'd expect to happen. The Lizardmen can block similarly with their shields. They're basically the only 2 enemies we've run in the game so far that have the ability to selectively block attacks. It's something you sort of have to be aware of starting from this point in the game. Now this room is a pain. It's incredibly slow. We've got these chain chomp style sort of ball and chains, and we've got to move this little column all the way down to the bottom of the room. We cannot put a pot on one of the 2 switches in the bottom. They'll just break as soon as you try to put them down. And unfortunately, we do not have the option to just put something down like you do in a lot of 3D games. I guess at that point I just said screw it and tanked a couple of hits, because, this pot's at the top, right? We'll get some health pickups. We're still at an 8 out of 15. And we can take a lot of hits out of it with the nifty leather armor, so I'm not too worried about it. Yep, there we go. 2 points of health, and we can move on to the next room, as if we haven't already finished enough rooms in this dungeon. This is the first time we've actually had to kill some of these bees, which is rather frustrating because their hitboxes are absurdly small, and the time they actually spend within range of us being able to hit them is also pretty short, since they keep floating up and down. Notice I'm having a great deal of trouble hitting this guy with the flail. Even though you'd think that considering it moves horizontally, it would be pretty easy to do, to wait for it to move into the range of my weapon. Anyway, what we want to do here is... Actually, no, what we want to do here, eventually, is get this barrel to land on that platform. You can eventually figure this out through trial and error, and you can actually have Alundra pick that barrel up again by jumping underneath it, which will sort of lock it to his head. Anyway, the correct way to do all these jumps is to sit on the edge of the platforms and basically jump straight, so you're sort of in between both of them. You can reach the green switch. You can imagine how many times it took me to get a run that clean of that particular room. Let me tell you, it was a lot. The room is tough. Anyway, hit that switch, and 2 barrels and 2 spike balls will fall into these 4 pits. I believe the barrels always fall into the same pit, so you can figure it out with trial and error, and you only need 2 or 3 barrels. I put these in the wrong place, so I'll need a 3rd one unless I want to move them around. It's easier just to get the 3rd one. And give yourself a little extra room. Sometimes the barrels will shatter on the walls of the little pits they're falling into and produce a life pickup, which is not something you can really take advantage of, because by going over there, by default, you'll force Alundra to pick up the barrel instead of letting it shatter. Anyway, here's another one of those 4 tile puzzles. If you take too long, the ones that aren't on platforms will actually shatter, meaning you have to go back up to the top and reset the puzzle. You also might not notice that the 2 hidden behind the flowers over there, but obviously since I'm doing this in walkthrough style, it's not really something we worry too much about. The puzzle is actually easier to solve if you enter from the top, because you start closer to where the actual stones are. And yes, again, a treasure chest fell on my head. I don't know why that keeps happening. It happened in Olin's dream too with the Gilded Falcon. This key is obviously the one we need to get through the locked door in the room just above us. These barrels also contain bees, or I should say they make bees spawn in the room despite also containing regular items. Not sure why that happens. And of course, by doing this, here we are, at the 4th statue. This one has a different message because it's the last one that we found. It tells us to behold what the Master of the Keep speaks, which is a pretty easy clue to divine compared to a lot of the other things we have to deal with in this dungeon so far. All we have to do is return to the first room of the area and speak with the guy who gave us this objective in the first place. Again, since we opened a variety of shortcuts, and there's actually a path that we can drop down directly to the opening of the dungeon from along the path we took to get here in the first place, getting back is actually pretty quick. So let's go do that. Alright, here we are. No real reason to cut here, considering how easy it is to get back. The path of true righteousness. He's talking like Bonaire. Jeez. Anyway, while we're here, since we just travailed the entire dungeon, let's quickly save our game, and we'll return to check out the basement. Yes, there is still quite a bit more dungeon after finding all 4 of those statues and solving all of those puzzles. Like I said, this dungeon is ridiculously long, which is a shame considering it doesn't really have anything to do with the plot. We just get items here that would be extremely useful to us in continuing onwards. Notice, of course, that we can't hit these switches with the flail as I was trying to do, flailing, so to speak, uselessly. But you can use mining bombs to each switch, and as you hit each switch, that little block blocking the exit moves up a little bit each time until we can enter this room, where there's basically nothing to do here but fight 8 sandworms. This is a good place to sort of leave a bomb just in case some of the enemies will sort of randomly walk into it, which I believe I'll do here. See, just like with the Grogs, there's a small hit animation and then the bomb rapidly moves to priming status as opposed to exploding directly like it does when we throw it at the turtles. Anyway, we did manage to take out 2 sandworms with that bomb, so let's get the other 6. That's 5, and that's 6. And now we have access to yet another room. Now, for those of you who watched the Alundra LP and made the connection between the stoned puzzles in that game and the ones in this dungeon, this particular puzzle should also look really familiar. In Dual Hearts, we actually saw a very slow passage of the permutation of puzzles we could solve using these stones and tiles over the course of the entire game. In Alundra, we basically go through all of them in the space of this single dungeon. What we have to do here is pretty straightforward. We basically wait for each individual tile to rotate to the correct symbol and throw the corresponding stone onto it. If you get it wrong, you can just leave the room to reset the puzzle, which we will, hint hint, spoiler alert, have to do later on because I screw up from time to time. I know. Shocking. Now this one is interesting. Notice that there's only one of the platforms similar to the ones that we used during the previous stone and tile puzzles. Yeah, I missed this guy with the bombs. Let's kill him the old-fashioned way. To death. This guy too, because it pisses me off. I don't know why. Here's one of those odd perspectives. That platform is actually substantially higher than the rest of the walkways in the room, so let's go back up just to read the clue to get a vague idea of what's going on. The sun's gaze held fast by his reflection on the water. Turning away with regret, he casts a glance upward to the starry sky, where Brother Moon resides. So that's definitely a reference to the 4 stones that we keep seeing in this dungeon, but we don't actually have the stones. We will if we can kill all the grogs in the room. This guy is easiest to kill with a bomb, assuming you can actually get a bomb up there. You can hit him using your jump attack, but again, they take 10 jump attacks to kill, so if you get a bomb up there, that's the easiest way, fastest way to do it. Actually, what the easiest way is just to walk right into the spikes, and the bomb will fall out of Alundra's hands right onto the platform. We'll use our strength tonic here, because I'm about to get one very shortly. Not during this dungeon, but soon after it. So what we have to do here on this one tile is basically stack the 4 stones in the order the clue referred to. It's a little vague onto where the moon and the star goes, but since you already have the sun and the water, I guess you could try either combination until you get it right. Miss the star. Kind of weird that the sun and the moon are both in the sky at the same time, but you know, whatever, it's magic or something. Check this guy out, he looks awfully familiar. Yeah, there is in fact a great variety of bosses in the game, but we haven't really done a very good job of illustrating it so far. Especially considering how pathetic the gelatinoid was. Notice on the northern wall, there's a sign that there are a bunch of hieroglyphs that look like the 4 tiles, and a sign that you can kind of make out the word news, which, as you can imagine, corresponds to north, east, west, and south. Basically, we have to put one of the 4 tiles on the corresponding cardinal direction when it rotates to the proper symbol. Again, like I said, we go through pretty much every regular iteration of this puzzle within this single dungeon. Now that's triggered something pretty obvious. Note that you can actually move here, and you're supposed to leave, but I just didn't realize it was possible. I thought this was a cutscene for the first little bit. You can take damage from the rocks while you're standing there. It's not really a good idea. But then again, you know, for experimental purposes, let's just pretend that was a demonstration. Alright, now the word says Swen. Swen's not a word. Is it? I don't know. Maybe it's archaic English. I have no idea. But anyway, we solved this puzzle in roughly the same way. You'll notice that when we solved the first puzzle, the sand drained a little bit in the center room above us. So you can kind of figure out what this one's going to do and what's going to follow shortly thereafter. Notice that, remember, our mobility is significantly reduced in sand, as I've been dealing with this entire dungeon. So we can sort of expect how the game's going to give us a fight against the same boss we just fought in Large as a Crypt, but with augmented difficulty. It's going to take away our ability to move. This is kind of funny. As soon as we approach the boss chamber, he kind of... Wait a minute. There he goes. Floats up. And then begins the boss fight. This guy is exactly the same as the boss in Lars's Crypt. We can interrupt his large sort of radial stone attack in the same way by striking him while he's in the middle of the animation, just like that. We have the flail now, which is 50% more powerful than the dagger, and therefore we can kill him about 50% faster. I should say 33% faster. In this case, because of the limited mobility, I did a really bad job of dodging his linear stone attacks. I mean, they just go back and forth. The easiest way to do it is just to move radially around him like I do here. But again, I got a bit lazy, not just because of the fact that our mobility is severely restricted, but also because we have the leather armor, which reduces the damage we take. I'll show off the Earth Scroll right there, just because it's the first thing we fought right now that can actually take a hit. It's about the same as hitting him 4 times with the flail, which is nice, I guess, but considering we only get 1 use out of it right now, not really that exciting. It did move him into the last phase of the boss battle, and in fact, very close to being dead. As you can see, by the fact that he is dead. Wonderful. I will stop that bleeping shortly by ingesting an herb. After this victory music. What did we win by beating that guy? Well, we won more dungeon. Yes, there is in fact quite a bit more to this place, and we'll be exploring it in the next episode of Let's Play Alundra, after I heal myself and stop that freaking racket. I'll see you then.